This weekend, yet more protests calling out the Trump administration for mass layoffs and reported harassment of federal workers. Around 100 people gathered in Washington Saturday to mark May Day, the annual holiday focused on workers' rights. One man told us he worked for the Department of Homeland Security, but just that day had submitted paperwork to accept the deferred resignation offer. But listen to why he did it.
It's become untenable. The atmosphere is just full of harassment, and it's pedantic, and it's the worst management I've ever worked under, to the point where it's having severe impacts on my health. The stress is outlandish. How bad does it have to get before people come out here and realize that this is not about efficiency? They found no fraud. If they did, where are the criminal charges? They found a lot of things they don't like ideologically.
Well, joining me now is Representative Sydney Kamlager-Dove of California. She sits on the House Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committee, and she's a good friend. We're awfully glad to have you here. So you spoke at a workers' rally, I understand, this week. What did you hear from your constituents? How much of an impact is this upheaval of federal agencies having on them?
Well, first, it's always good to see you. We know that the workforce is our country's strongest asset, and we know that workers help make this country run. And this president, who said he was pro-labor when he's running, he lies like he breathes, because he came into office and he is terminating workers unlawfully. He is coming for their collective bargaining rights, and he is taking away their benefits and their retirement packages. And so I was at one of the rallies earlier this week, standing with workers, saying, this is unlawful, this is unconstitutional, we have to fight because you are so important. And let me tell you, Alex, as I was going to vote, I was stopped by a Capitol Police officer who asked me if all of this was true. He said, I'm trying to provide for my family, and should I leave right now? What should I do? Because I feel like my benefits are under attack, and I don't know who else to ask. This is a president who is coming after workers and coming after all of us when he's tanking the economy. Because if you have a weak economy with these tariffs, you're cutting into R&D, you're cutting into manufacturing, you're cutting into logistics, you're cutting into consumerism, and all of that also impacts workers.
Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, they have rejected amendments to prevent ICE from detaining or deporting a U.S. citizen. It was in the bill to boost immigration enforcement right. I'm going to play for everybody a little bit of reaction to what you had to say about that. Here it is.
Republicans must be in some kind of diabolical paralysis if they are unwilling to stand up for the Constitution for Americans by not supporting this bill. And then I had to read it again. I said, maybe I'm missing something, because, you know, I'm from California. But I was like, well, wow, deport to where? Because, like, if you're an American, you're going to deport an American to where?
I mean, how surprised were you by this bill? I mean, how far do you think Republicans are willing to go on this?
I thought I was on candid camera. We have this bill that was essentially giving all of this money to ICE while we're already talking about cutting Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, of course, important things. And then we offered all of these amendments basically saying, will you stand up for the Constitution and your constituents? And Republicans were silent, like church mice. They said, yes, we want to deport and detain Americans. Yes, it's okay if you kidnap Americans. Yes, we want to cavity search children. Yes, we want ICE to go into detention, into domestic violence shelters. Yes, we want to impeach judges. And yes, we want to protect this government, this president, from any kind of civil charges. They will not defend their constituents, but they will defend Donald Trump.
That is an absolutely extraordinary assessment there. Let's take a look at a Reuters investigation. And here's what it found. At least 11 federal judges whose families have faced threats of violence or harassment after they ruled against the Trump administration. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, she spoke out about the situation, which she says, quote, ultimately risks undermining our Constitution and the rule of law. What, if anything, can you and your fellow Democrats on judiciary do to demand accountability?
Well, amen. to Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Which, by the way, they don't like to do.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court justices don't want to go outside of the court or their written.
Correct.
Yes.
Their job is to interpret the law. They're not trying to wade into political discussion. My neighbor in my office building has a wanted poster of judges, and it says, "Go get them." And some of these are conservative judges actually appointed by Trump. And so what they're saying is, we don't want judges to interpret the law. We want judges to follow Donald Trump. Our job in judiciary is to raise the alarm and to tell the American people exactly what is going on, because there is a wild and impressive propaganda machine coming out of the White House trying to pacify Americans. And we have to keep them awake by telling them the truth about what we are seeing, what we are hearing, and what Republicans are doing and not doing.
Wow. Do you and that office neighbor ever share time in the elevator together? Like, that'd be interesting.
I give a lot of side eye in the elevator, Alex. Yes, I do.
Why do I not doubt that? Let's talk about former Vice President Kamala Harris, who spoke about the threats to the rule of law this week. It was in her first major speech since the election loss. Let's take a listen to that.
We are living in a moment when the checks and balances upon which we have historically relied have begun to buckle. And we here know that when the checks and balances ultimately collapse, if Congress fails to do its part, or if the courts fail to do their part, or if both do their part, but the president defies them anyway, well, friends, that is called a constitutional crisis. And that is a crisis that will eventually impact everyone.
What's your response to that? And I'm curious how large a role you think she's going to play in the Democratic Party going forward.
Great question. I think she's here for as long as she wants to be here. She's been saying what all of us have been echoing for some time now. This is going to be a long, protracted battle against this administration. Teams win when they work together. We all have a role to play. If it's reporting the news, if it's speaking up, standing up, if it's showing up in committee, if it's raising the roof, if it's marching, we all have a role to play, and we have to do it. We don't need only quarterbacks and only kickers, right? So find your role, find your lane, and lean in so we can win for this country.
How much do I love our conversations? You are welcome anytime you can make it. I'm not kidding.
Take you up on that.
Okay, we'll see you next week. Thank you, Sydney Kamler. I appreciate that.